August has been a quiet one. We are still fighting off heat waves in the UK, although not really in Scotland, but I think that slowed the painting output. We're also into crunch time for Scale Model Challenge and Golden Demon at Spiel in Essen, but despite all odds and a week off, I've still managed to find some amazing pieces for you to enjoy this month. So let's take a look. If you like any of these, they're all linked in the description, and my hope is that you get to discover a new artist or new miniatures that you might have missed. Okay, so we're going to start this month's roundup with Zhangji Yang and the Reclusian that they have painted. This is still a work in progress, but I wanted to highlight this since I've been doing my fair share of gold NMM recently, and this really caught my eye in that regard. Not only have you got the deeper tones like orange and red-brown near the bottom of the legs and feet, but you've also got this really nice green coming in from the knees upwards, and although I don't think that gold necessarily reflects quite as much colour as this in real life, it does a wonderful job of bringing the gold to life and adding some visual interest amongst the complexity of the reflections. I also like the skin tones used on the face, and consider the fact that you can see that shiny dome is going pretty high in value so that it doesn't lose the focus to the gold highlights which are almost in white. Something also to note is the eye being drawn upwards by choosing to keep the highest values on the back leg lower and using the line of that front leg to point upwards towards the chest and the head. Top work to start us off this month. Next, we have Lada Miniatures, a painter based up here in Scotland now, who has just come off the back of a gold win in Masters at Fen Model Show. This one jumped out of his box when I saw it, and it really looked incredible on the shelf at the show. This is Rolroth, the Goblin Rogue from Hera Models, and this one is a classic complementary scheme with the blue, purple and those yellowy tones. I remember seeing this and immediately fixating on that front line of the hood and the face, which are just really framed so nicely by the cast shadows painted on here. The blue feels even more vibrant in person on that hood and the cloak, and I love the almost understated and not kind of overcomplication of the metal elements here. Even with roughly the same hues, you can see the smoothness of the knives compared with the rough scratched texture of the shoulder pad, and the leathers are very well done. Lada has managed to accurately convey both the wear and tear of the leather through to the hide, as well as the highlights on that top layer without falling into the trap of confusing those two things. Pretty incredible work all round. Now we have one of David's pieces which he is taking to Golden Demon at Spiel this year. This is his Cities of Sigmar squad, titled The Last Stand of the Witch Hunters. If you're looking for him on Instagram, it is The Hooked Tip. Firstly, the composition on this one grabbed me. I am a big fan of squadoramas, as I've heard them called, and we have a nice triangle happening here with clear focal points on the heads, as well as simple lines from all of those weapons, all pointing the eyes to the right places. Bonus points for the dog, of course, which I find my eye lands on afterwards, and then gives me that little bit of storytelling from the claw coming out of the ground. And then I want you to take a closer look at the metals here. We can see that we've got silvery steel on the go, but when you actually look at the colours, there is a huge range of subtle hues happening on each of the kind of metal areas, from purples to yellows and greens, and actually that hammerhead at the top almost feels iridescent, which I absolutely love. I'm also a big fan of the expression on the face of the guy holding the sword. The paintwork on that furrowed brow, the strong features, the super nice highlighting on those lower eyelids. I could spend a long time looking at this, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it in person in October. Back up in scale now, let's look at this amazing take on the Hex figure that's obviously been doing the rounds. I think we've all seen some pretty incredible versions of this bust, but this one is my absolute favourite. Styled off Jinx from Arcane, this is French painter Seine, aka Nebrusion. He's gone hard on the vibrant graffiti-esque stylings here. I love the alternative approach, as well as the subtle additions to the sculpt on the helmet specifically. Of course, course, the colours jump out, the illustrations and the graffiti go a long way for me on this, but there are some really nice touches here. There is the cast shadow on the helmet, which has these almost fang-like additions, which I think brings like a cheeky edge to that frame or the shadow on the face. There's the purple shadows in the cheeks, which sit up so nicely with the bright blue hair either side of the face, and then the red eyes, which in any other figure might end up making them look a bit stoned, but here have something of an otherworldly feel to them. Does the plinth take a lot of attention? Yes, but does it help build the scene and tell the story while breaking the fourth wall elegantly? Also yes. Next up, we've got Mr. Ross Tovey, who is rapidly becoming something of a master painter, in my opinion. This is his entry for the Get Good Brushstrokes challenge. As soon as I saw this piece, I immediately wanted to paint a bust, and there's something about this which I think I'm starting to see in a lot of other pieces that I love. Well, two things really. Firstly, alternative, perhaps less realistic colour choices for materials, in this case super high chroma red hair and blue shadows for example, but also a pretty vibrant base coat of what I think was also probably red here. I'm starting to see a number of pieces I like with these non-black base coats shining through. Anyway, this one has a wonderful blue thing going on. I think it's a light from the back right, while the main light is from the top left, but that blue is obviously bouncing around since it's coming into a lot of the shadow areas, and just really works well with the red, which I wouldn't necessarily have predicted. The quality of painting on show here, despite the fact that I think this is a tiny bust, is phenomenal. Lots of brush strokes, lots of vibrancy, my new favourite word, and yeah, big fan of this. Inspirational stuff, Ross. Next up is another dwarf from Quentin Sculptor, this time done by Russian painter Acrylic Therapy. Another one which caught my eye because I am still sitting on 3 busts from Quentin, and every time I see one of these painted well, I bank it for inspiration. Traditional in colour scheme here with the green robes peeking through, but I really like the deep reds of the shadow in the skin, and the subsurface scattering which is happening at all of the Terminator lines on the skin. The spear metals have got some nice green tones in them, and in fact a lot of the metals across the model are just comfortably well executed. Look at things like the bounce light on all the rivets, look at the bronze gold up near the spear blade, or that glinting belt buckle. I also really like the browns and the tans on the big horn round the back, as well as the purple colours that are coming into the back sides of the leathers and the wraps around the back of the Mini. Acrylic Therapy has a massively underfollowed account on Instagram and some beautiful pieces on offer, so well worth checking her stuff out. Okay, next up is Lee Agnew, aka Frostblight Minis from Down Under. They took this speed painting bust that they'd done and worked it into it further, going like way into those blue tones, and holy moly, what a result. Now, I've not seen the back, but this one's all about the face for me. I am a sucker for petrol blues. So take them and mix them up into creamy turquoise blues and you're onto a winner. It is a simple concept, but it's a lovely piece of ambience. There's the subtle skin tones coming in from the bottom, and the purples in the shadows, including the lovely cast shadows, which you almost don't even notice on first glance that they feel so natural. But the focus is clear, the values are really working, and yet for something that came out of a speed painting session with another little bit more time on it, this is bang on the money. Check out Lee's profile for more painterly goodness. Now, up next is another Russian painter who goes by Jephthah, or scaled by, it might be Yeftha, scaled by Yeftha on Instagram. Now, their thing seems to be taking real items and building military dioramas inside them. There are countless amazing examples on their profile, but I picked this one up, posted just last month, of a trench scene inside a grenade or a Mills bomb. This one is all about the concept for me. Great thinking, very impressive modelling skills, and actually an interesting consideration given to scale, since the scene feels perhaps as claustrophobic as I imagine the World War I trenches may have been. This one is gritty, it's got a lot of layers of dirt and weathering, and it just fits so nicely as a piece, certainly in my opinion. I really recommend checking them out on Instagram and perusing the others on their profile. There are cups of tea, missiles, bombs, shells, helmets, and all sorts, and it is all super fun. Now, those of you who know the models by LH Minis will probably recognise this style. This is their new release titled Curtain Co. This is a new artwork from one of my favourite painters, Keigo Murakami. There's an elegant simplicity to this piece, but hidden in that simple approach is just a huge amount of depth and skill. Firstly, the obvious smooth skin tones while still having cast shadows from the curtain and the hair, that soft brushwork and that incredible detail. Look at those eyes, they come across so realistically. But then you have the curtain, which has this lovely gold sheen, but also has a hue shift towards the left, which is subtle, but just brings a little bit of visual interest. And then you've got the hair, which although browny blonde has a little bit of blue highlights in some of the shadow areas and up top, and a really nice richness of colour throughout. And then you balance that blue on the hair with the blue of her top, just peeking through the hair at the bottom. And this is just a really wonderfully precise and considered piece from the Japanese master. Okay, this next one is from Dan, aka Fox Minis. The piece is Eric Swinson's masterclass bust Huiron, and having taken Eric's class recently, I know some of the challenges this piece brings with it. Dan's take, however, is a little bit left of centre and pushes the model into drow territory. For those who don't know the D&D or fantasy lore, drow are a race of subterranean dark elves. Of course, the first thing you see are the skin tones, much more purpley and lilac than your regular flesh tone, and obviously pushing into blues for the 5 o'clock shadow. Then you've got the wonderful texture on the cloak, which, if the class technique was followed, maybe a bit of cheeky Drybrush stippling to get that lovely woolly texture. And then take a look at the leathers. Again, I think across the board, mini painters are getting better and better at painting leather. Where we see the worn edges, but also we allow the highlights to reflect on the unworn parts so that you see those two layers of the leather rather than just using the worn edges to define the edges of the shape. Of course, the eyes do a lot of work here too with that glint of orangey yellow, and I don't think it's an easy choice to run with light hair, but it feels like it fits so well here. So yeah, top work, Dan. This one's a cracker. Okay, let's step into the realm of cell shading for a moment. This is painter Elena Vladimirova, aka Siberian Hydra, and her take on the cell shading stuff. Of course, this is something she does for many of her artworks. She's well practiced here, and I think it fits this miniature really well considering its comic origins. I actually love the sculpt here too, but I think Elena has done a wonderful job of keeping the suit that high chroma red while allowing a little bit of orange to highlight without overpowering or going into the pinks or the whites. I love the heavy dark lining, or well, black lining here, I guess, and things like the movement lines or wrinkles on each panel nicely suggest the shape of things. I love the burst of colour from the helmets on the base, and even the way she's done the metal swords, which somehow read as metal with all that blue and the high contrast rather than just looking like white swords. I also think the temptation to make black things black when cell shading is easy, but there's at least 3 or 4 different grey tones at work here on those black areas. If you're not familiar with her work, you can see a bunch of other incredibly well rendered pieces on her Instagram if this is your sort of thing. Our penultimate mini this month is from Swiss artist Quentin Jimmy Point, who has battled the Swiss heatwaves to bring us this Cedric Peraverne inspired bust. The first thing I thought about this was that it felt less dark in theme or in nature than the others. I've seen a lot of this style in this bust, and I think actually this one is a lot kind of... It is just less dark. I think a lot of that comes down to the pink in the vest, which I love as a choice, and I feel like you don't see it all that often. The brush strokes on display here are really wonderful, of course, and actually the circular nature of them on the rest of the torso help frame the face as a focal point. I love the colour that's being brought into the face too, from yellows and green blues to the reds on the nose and greens on the forehead and around the eyes. Just super nice hue variation across the model really, and a wonderful variety of work on his Instagram if you fancy discovering a new artist. Last up this month is this Hellboy sculpt painted by Paul No, who goes under Bipolar Bear on Instagram. We're looking at another almost cel-shaded approach here, and I like this one for a couple of reasons. Firstly, the red and yellow working well with the light blue secondary light from the left, but also those yellow-orange tones within that light from the right really jump out of the model. I think the simplicity of this sculpt really helps the shapes and the colours work here, and although the red of the skin is highlighted through yellow, it goes up to this kind of pinker shade, while the yellow on the jacket stays on the warm side, so you get that difference. And I'm also a big fan of the blues and greens on the jacket itself here too. Basically, just overall colour choices are really doing it for me here. Paul is still growing as a painter, but his Insta is full of busts and minis to feast your eyes upon, including a really well rendered version of LH Craft's Flower Garden of the Mystic Dream, so you can go find that. That's us for another month. September is just around the corner, and as mentioned, it's crunch time for anyone doing SMC or Golden Demon. If you're attending either show, then come say hi if you see me, and if you have any other favourites from this month's video, be sure to throw them in the comments. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, go finish something.